Welcome to the Celiac Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Lucia Cordaro, and this is where we get real about life with celiac disease. Each week, I'll share practical gluten-free tips, wellness hacks, and honest conversations about the emotional side of living with an autoimmune condition. Think of this as your weekly mix of support, relatability, and inspiration to help you not just survive, but thrive with celiac. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder, I'm not a medical professional. Everything I share is based on my own experience living with celiac disease. This podcast is not medical advice, so please always consult your doctor about your own health. Welcome back to Celiac Diaries. I'm your host, Lucia Cordaro, and we have Matt Weinstein with us.
Hello.
From The Glass of Weinstein. Thank you so much for coming into the studio today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. If you don't know, Matt is a dedicated gluten-free cook and content creator based out of New York City. Matt was diagnosed with celiac in fall of 2014. So you've had celiac for 11 years now?
11 years. Just had my 11th anniversary like 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I saw your anniversary post on Instagram. I loved it. And you work in recipe development while spreading awareness, combating myths, and questioning disparities around celiac disease and the folks living with it.
Absolutely.
I love it. And I also love your Instagram bio that says you're unapologetically queer, Jewish, and celiac.
Count them off, baby. Count them off.
And you're also the creator of the Gluten-Free Town Hall virtual series on Instagram.
Yeah, that's my baby, my little passion project.
Amazing. We're going to have to get more into that later as
We
well.
will.
And I love your handle, by the way, Glass of Weinstein. Is there a story behind that?
So I'm a really irreverent person. And when I was coming up with different options for what I wanted my handle to be, I knew I wanted it to be tongue-in-cheek. I wanted there to be a little, play on words. My last name being Weinstein, I was like, what can I do with this? What can I do with this? When we were in the pandemic, all I was doing was drinking glasses of wine. And I was like, glass of wine, that's funny, Glass of Weinstein. And then that just kind of took off. Also remembering that I started my page as a hobby. I didn't expect it to become my full-time job. So when I picked that name, it was just supposed to be this fun thing. And now it's a brand, it's a part of my whole life and identity.
Yeah, that's awesome. So did you start in the pandemic then, your page?
I sure did.
Okay, wow. Amazing. Yeah, I feel like that's a common story with creators. It starts as a hobby, and so many of us started during the pandemic because there was so much extra time.
Yeah, I feel like if you weren't one of the OG bloggers, early 2000s gluten-free blogger, you had your sort of comeuppance in the gluten-free community around the time of the pandemic. I feel like there's 2 eras of the creators in our space.
No, definitely. Yeah. All right. So at Celiac Diaries, we have some weekly segments. First up, we have News of the Week. Researchers published an international review in the journal Gastroenterology showing that the economic burden of celiac disease goes well beyond just the cost of gluten-free food, which, I think, as people that both have celiac disease, we are aware of that. But seeing that this, is a study that's posted in this international review, I think is just very validating. And it went into all of the different costs, including not just the cost of gluten-free food, but medical costs, healthcare services, more appointments, checkups, endoscopies, and even indirect costs like reduced work productivity, missed educational opportunities, and, just affecting so many different aspects of your life, and that adds up in different ways.
Yeah, I think the word cost has a sort of double entendre here of yes, the financial cost of things, but also we know as people living with celiac disease, the emotional cost, the mental cost of what this disease kind of takes from us at first and how we choose to progress in it. I think that's just an interesting word to sort of fully encapsulate the experience.
Yeah, no, exactly. I agree. Because, it's not just about the actual financial burden, but I do know the financial burden is a huge one. And even just having the financial burden and stress that affects your emotions and just your quality of life in general beyond that. I know specifically in the US, there's a lot of talk online about how other countries have different subsidies for people that are gluten-free or living with celiac.
Do. And here we are in America just twiddling our thumbs.
Right, exactly. But I know that you're involved with a really exciting fundraiser right now called Feeding Gluten-Free, if you want to talk about that.
Yes. So I am one of 60 creators who are teaming up with the National Celiac Association this month to raise money for gluten-free folks who are being affected by the SNAP benefit cuts that are happening nationwide. So we started this campaign on November 1st, so at the time of recording this, 2 days ago. This is being spearheaded by my friends Gabby Stokes and Liz Purvis. Gabby is Gluten-Free Girlies and Liz is Eat That Wheat. They are really leading the charge in this. So they've asked us to share the fundraiser with all of our followers. We're trying to get brands involved. And as of the time of this recording, we are, I think, at $28,000 raised in 2.5 days.
That's incredible.
It's
wow.
absolutely astounding and beautiful to see what can happen when the community comes together and rallies. And it makes me really optimistic of like, if this is something that we can do right now, what can we as a gluten-free community continue to do? And how can we use these efforts to constantly be pushing the envelope for our advocacy and awareness and getting people fed? You know, like we just talked about, the cost of gluten-free living is egregiously expensive. And I think there is a certain level of privilege for certain people who don't have to think twice about, you know, spending the $9 on a loaf of gluten-free bread. For the average everyday American who is diagnosed with celiac disease, that's a huge, huge cost increase. So the money that we're raising is going to be spent filling food banks across the country with gluten-free products that are accessible to anybody that needs them, that is being affected by the SNAP cut benefits.
Yeah, that is so awesome and so inspiring that y'all are putting that fundraiser together. And that's just unbelievable that you've already raised that much.
So much money. The original goal was 10,000.
Wow.
We hit that like halfway through day one. So Gabby was like, well, I guess I'll bump it up to 20. And then yesterday we hit 20. And today, like, it just keeps coming.
That just shows how strong the community is and how, you know, excited people are to support this cause. That's so amazing.
Yeah,
wow.
I think especially when you consider everyone that's a part of it has been through this. They know firsthand what the financial cost of this thing is. So
exactly,
there's a personal stake, I think, for everyone involved and for everyone that's donated so far. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing. We are definitely going to link the fundraiser in the show notes. Yeah. And share it so that our listeners can also support. All right. We're moving on to our next weekly segment, which is Gluten-Free Fave of the Week.
Okay. So I'm a New Yorker for 13 years. My favorite gluten-free restaurant in New York still to this day, before I moved here, since I've lived here, is Keste, which is a pizza place.
I love that place. I used to live 2 blocks away from it, and it was amazing.
So I used to go to the location on Bleecker Street before I was diagnosed with celiac, before I lived here with my family. We'd come into the city and we'd specifically go there for pizza. And then I moved here. I would go, you know, when I was at school. And then when I was diagnosed, I learned that they also had a separate kitchen where they could do the gluten-free pizzas. So to this day, it's my favorite place to go to. I always feel like it's like my third home. You know, there's like where you live, where you work, and where you eat. And Keste has a really special place in my heart. I know the staff there, they treat me, I feel like family. And it just has a really wonderful sentimental value to me. And the pizza's freaking amazing. So that helps.
Well, that's so fun that one of your favorite places before you were gluten-free is still one of your favorite places.
Yeah, like it was like
so
meant
many
to be.
options.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That
How
is a
about
really
you?
good spot.
What's your fave of the week?
Okay, so I actually haven't had this in the past week, but you reminded me that I love Schnippers and I need to go back because
Shout out to Schnippers.
You posted on your Instagram story you were there earlier today.
Literally like an hour ago.
Yeah, and I'm in my gluten-free burger era. I am just loving the gluten-free buns right now, and there's so many in so many restaurants in New York City, but Schnippers does do it really well.
Have you been to Deluxe down on Broome Street?
I have not.
It's relatively new.
Oh, okay.
They are really conscientious about celiac safety, so they have a separate area for their gluten-free buns, and their burgers are incredible. Truly incredible. Highly recommend. Shout out.
Okay, I'm going to need to add that one to my list.
Yeah.
This is exciting. So we're just so excited that you are here to share your entire story with us. And I think we should start from the beginning with your diagnosis story.
Absolutely. So I've been living with celiac disease for 11 years. I was diagnosed in 2014, a few months after my 21st birthday.
Okay.
So I will say I had a really privileged experience. From the time of my symptoms reaching their peak to the time of my diagnosis was 4 weeks. Like I got
4 weeks.
I got my diagnosis super fast. So I remember I was having lunch with a friend and we went to this diner. I had a fried buffalo chicken sandwich, and afterward I had this really intense stabbing pain in my abdomen. Didn't know what it was.
And you had never had anything like that before?
No.
Wow.
And then the next day I went to eat something and again had that stabbing pain. And it persisted for about a week or so. So I tried to do, and I'm using air quotes here, an elimination diet. So I did, this is such a 21-year-old thing. No alcohol, no fried food, no dairy, to see if that would sort of like neutralize the gut. Mm-hmm. I clearly didn't know much about what cleaning the gut actually would entail. And so I did that for maybe a week or so. My symptoms were still persisting because I was still eating like dry pasta. So I was, dry toast. I was still eating gluten, but obviously didn't know that that's what it was causing the problem in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I saw a doctor here in New York who did not treat me too greatly. He was like, well, if we need to do an endoscopy, we will, but I don't think we're at that place. Here's a prescription for acid reflux. And he kind of sent me on my way. And I remember calling my mom in the streets of New York crying like, I feel really sick and I don't know what's happening. Mm-hmm. So my parents brought me back to New Jersey, which is where I grew up. And this is where my privilege comes in, is we had someone that we knew from our temple, our synagogue growing up, Dr. Merkel, who was a GI. And my dad got me into his office like the next day. And we started like a half a week to a full week of intense tests. So the abdominal scan where you have to drink that really viscous fluid so they can do, the full X-ray and scan of everything happening in there. Okay. Lots of blood work and a few other things. And I went back to New York. I got a call from Dr. Merkel saying, your blood test came back positive for celiac disease. And I'm on the other end of the phone like, what's that?
Right.
Because I'd never heard those words before. Mm-hmm. This was 2014. So this was at the time where like the only context of gluten-free was like the housewives were eating gluten-free. Like I didn't.
Right, like as a trend or a fad diet.
That's really what it was. I didn't have consciousness that it was a serious thing. Mm-hmm. So I went back to New Jersey.
That's so crazy. So much has changed, though, since 2014, because now I think in New York, most people would know what celiac disease is. Yeah. Or at least, a lot more people than would then. But
I'm always surprised when I go to a restaurant because I'm sure people can relate to this. Whenever I go out, I just say, I have a severe gluten allergy. I think you mentioned that on one of the episodes. Mm-hmm, your dinner theater. Oh, my God. I always kind of dumb it down. And so whenever a server is like, oh, like celiac disease,
I love when they say that. I'm like,
they get it. Like, oh my gosh, thank you for knowing what that is, because that makes me feel like you understand the nuance of what my life is, what my dietary needs are. Mm-hmm. But in 2014, like we weren't talking about celiac disease, even just being taken seriously about gluten-free at all in restaurants with family and friends was a hurdle to overcome. But I got my diagnosis, and
did you do an endoscopy?
Yeah, we did the endoscopy to confirm my intestines were super, super inflamed, super, super red. The villi were nowhere to be found. And I started eating gluten-free, I think, that afternoon. We went to the store and we had like the Vans oat bars,
I remember
if
those.
You remember those,
yeah.
and like the Glatino bagel chips. Like this was when we had very slim pickings for... Oh, wait,
right,
I don't even think Canyon Bakehouse existed yet. I think it was just Udi's bread with the gigantic holes in the center. So sorry, Udi's. So sorry. You know what you did.
That brings me back.
Yeah, I think the craziest part of my journey was I got diagnosed with celiac disease. And then 2 weeks later, I booked a contract to work on a cruise ship for 6 months and just went and did that.
Wow. Were you performing on the cruise ship?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, wow.
Because my background is in theater, so...
Yes. Well, we have a lot in common because we both have celiac and we're both content creators, but we also both have theater backgrounds. So I started college as a theater major. I saw, I did a little stalking on you before you came on the podcast, but I saw you went to AMDA and majored in musical theater.
I did go to AMDA. That's what brought me to New York in the first place 13 years ago.
That's so awesome. I started school as a theater major, but I did not in school as a theater major.
What was your pivot to?
Film ended up being my final major, so like related.
Not too adjacent, yeah.
I ended up doing like business and marketing communications, so a little bit related to theater.
Totally. And I feel like my theater background absolutely shows up in what I do now as a content creator, as a person who films, themselves cooking at home, etc.
Definitely. But so you were performing on the cruise ship. How was that with celiac?
Cruise ship life is wild in and of itself.
Right.
But to be on a ship, newly diagnosed with celiac, and I didn't fully understand the nuance of my disease for, I think, the first 3 or 4 years I want to
Totally,
say.
yeah.
Like, I remember being in crew bar, which is like where, where the crew,
okay.
gets drunk at nighttime. And we could call and order pizzas down there. And my friends would eat the pizza and I would peel the cheese off and eat the cheese off of the pizza.
I used to do that too.
Because I didn't know any better.
Or another thing I would do is I would just get like a regular hamburger and then I would just take off
the bun
and just like eat the meat in the middle.
Yeah, but
that's so bad.
Because when your doctor calls and says you have to go gluten-free, there's no conversation about, make sure you're not cross-contaminating or having cross-contact and make sure, there's no suggestions to go and see a dietitian. There's no, like, none of that, at least when I was diagnosed.
Yeah.
So I was kind of floundering for a few years. I cross-contacted. I did cross-contact.
There needs to be a verb for that in the dictionary.
Forever. For many, many years. Because my symptoms weren't really presenting, but just because your symptoms aren't presenting doesn't mean that they're not happening. Right?
Right, exactly.
Celiac disease being the invisible disease that it is, you don't really know what's going on. Some people are asymptomatic the whole time, even before and after diagnosis. So
totally, yeah. Or there's symptoms that maybe you don't realize are connected to celiac disease because you're just not aware of it.
Like, why does my head hurt? Because you ate gluten.
Right, exactly.
Hello, wake up.
I saw you also used to be a Taco Bell fan. I was obsessed with Taco Bell in college.
Babe, what I wouldn't do for some Taco Bell.
I know, right?
But yeah, like cross-contact nightmare.
Exactly,
I don't know how I did that for so long.
Right, yeah.
And like live to tell the tale.
I know. No, I was the same with cross-contact. I was diagnosed when I was 11, but I probably did cross-contact for 10 years because it wasn't until I was like maybe 21 where I was like, oh, okay, actually, I need to learn more about this and realize that was something I needed to figure out. But
it's always so interesting for me to talk to people who were diagnosed as children because I have no idea what that experience is. I was diagnosed at 21. So like you had your whole childhood, adolescence, college with celiac disease. All of mine was post-grad,
Right, yeah.
And that experience, like it's eye-opening whenever I chat with people who have lived so long with this thing.
Right. It's interesting. It is a different experience, but at the same time, I think for those 10 years, I maybe wasn't so aware of certain things and didn't manage it in the best way. But it definitely is different, like forming like as a kid, kind of like knowing that you do have this special diet, even if you're not aware of some of the nuances of it. But yeah, I'm curious since you're such a cook and you have so many amazing recipes that you share.
Glassofweinstein.com.
Yeah.
Plug.
Was that something that you loved to do before you were diagnosed with celiac disease? And when you were diagnosed, how did that change your relationship with it? Yeah,
so cooking has always been a big love of mine. I feel like theater and food were always my two big passions. I started cooking with my mom when I was in high school. Where other kids my age, I always say they were watching MTV. I was watching Ina Garten on the Food Network. Like that's what I watched when I got home. And I think my mom kind of picked up on how much I was watching these food shows. And one night she pulled me into the kitchen. She put a cutting board and a knife in front of me and a head of garlic. And she said, I'm going to teach you how to chop garlic. And, I learned the technique. And from there, she taught me basically everything that she knows. And my curiosity just kind of flourished. And she gave me the space and permission to really tap into that creativity in the kitchen. And I think my celiac diagnosis opened just like a new door in that avenue because I was still being creative. I was still pursuing things. I just had to figure out, okay, well, how do I now adapt the techniques I know and the recipes I know to make sure that they're celiac safe for me now?
Right.
And I think the pandemic was a big opportunity for me to really hunker down and there was nothing to do. My industry was shut down.
Right,
and I was desperate to be creative in any kind of way. And so I was cooking a lot in lockdown and was going to the store and just buying a bunch of stuff I'd never cooked before and teaching myself a lot. And then I started my page to share, like, here's some of the stuff that I'm making in the pandemic. Here's how I made it. We had like the iPhone 11 or 13 at the time. So that these relatively blurry pictures, sort of shaky videography. But that's how the more serious side of my cooking passion came about, was I think because of the pandemic.
That's amazing. So what is your process when you're creating a new gluten-free recipe? Do you just kind of experiment with a bunch of different things? Are you starting with something more traditional that is like a regular non-gluten-free dish and adapting it? Or how do you go about it?
That's a great question. I think it depends what what I'm trying to do. Because if it's a cooking recipe, I'm riffing. I'm riffing and then I'll try it, see how it went, and then I'll try and remember like what exactly I used. If I'm baking, I'm like, okay, get my scale, measure
like
everything out. Because it has to be. I always say baking is science. Gluten-free baking is mad science. It's so
I love that.
particular. But when I'm cooking, I'm throwing dash of salt, butter here. It's cooking is so free flowing to me. I don't measure anything when I'm cooking.
Okay.
When I'm baking, it has to be super precise. But
would you say that gluten-free baking is harder than regular baking?
Yes, 1,000,000 trillion billion %. Absolutely.
And do you exclusively do gluten-free baking now? Or is there any way for people with celiac to bake something that's not gluten-free? Like if you had gloves and like a mask on or something?
I guess they could, but I wouldn't.
Totally. Okay. Yeah.
I live by myself, so I would never even consider bringing gluten into my own home. But I think that's sort of the thing is I didn't really bake much prior to my diagnosis. I cooked.
Okay.
Like I'm a cook first.
Right.
The baking has been a sort of newer challenge for me, which has been really, really exciting. The more that I learn and figure out what works, and there's a lot of what doesn't work. But I think because I didn't bake a lot prior, I feel like I'm trying to learn sort of two things at once. The first thing being just like the classic technique of how either a cake or a cookie is structured, chemically. And now it's like, okay, you know that, but now you also have to figure out like, well, okay, now how do you do that without the gluten in it? And that's always a challenge for sure. Patience has been a key ingredient in my life in the last few years.
I know on your Instagram page, you're always talking about how, with Jewish holidays, food is such a big part of that. How has that been for you with celiac disease and also being a cook and being able to make those recipes, but in a gluten-free way? What has that been like?
Surprisingly, it's been a pretty easy transition. I think you're Italian, right?
I am, yeah.
So I think you can relate to like celebrations revolve around food. Anything with your family revolves around food. In Jewish culture, like someone's born, you eat. Someone has a birthday, you eat. Someone dies, you eat. Like there's always food involved.
Yeah.
And to me, that is just like a translation of love. And so for me, so long as like the love still exists in what I'm making, like it still feels like as Jewish as it was before. Obviously, there's like a substitution of the ingredients that I've worked on. Like I know how to make latkes 100% gluten-free now. I've made a from scratch matzo ball recipe that I'm super proud of. But like my mom's brisket recipe was always gluten-free, and I've made some adjustments just for, my palate, but to be able to make that for friends every year. I host a Passover Seder every spring, and it's usually between 12 to 18 people that I squeeze into my one bedroom up in Harlem, and I cook, and there's so much food, and it's just like a joyful experience to share my food and my culture with my people. But the gluten-free side of it, I think it's been easy because I've been doing it for so long. My first Jewish holiday that I tried to host post-diagnosis, I tried to do gluten and gluten-free stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that was a mistake because I should have just...
Well, that's a lot in a kitchen to keep track of.
Right. And again, this was, I think, just a week after my diagnosis.
Oh, that's so ambitious.
Yeah. So it was like diagnosis, Rosh Hashanah, go on a cruise ship for 6 months. Like that was the was the timeline. Ambitious. Like I feel like I've always been a bit ambitious. So I've learned over the years, like, no, we're just going to do what's safe for me because it's my house. And I want to make sure that I don't gluten myself in my own home.
And I mean, you're making delicious things, so I doubt anyone would even know that it's gluten-free.
Yeah. And I feel like the more I practice, the more we lean away from I wouldn't even know. Like my friends just know that it's going to be good no matter what it is.
Exactly.
And like that's a pat on the back moment for me. I take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, totally. That's so awesome. I'm curious, we were talking earlier how you went to celiac camp.
Yee!
Another very fun experience. Do you want to talk all about, well, one, what is celiac camp?
Absolutely.
And what was it like?
So there are actually 3 different celiac camps that exist in the country from what I know.
Wow.
There's 2 on the East Coast. I was fortunate enough to go to the one on the West Coast in California in Livermore. My friend Molly Duncan, she is a friend of mine I've made through, social media. She is the current director of celiac camp in California. And she reached out to me last summer after their camp had ended. And she said, I've been following you for a long time. We're looking for some counselors to come in. And we think that you would be amazing. Is that something you would think about? And I had heard a lot that this existed. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Just tell me more about, what the expectations for me would be. And over the course of the year, we figured out all the logistics and I booked my flight. And so Celiac Camp, it's a week-long program that happens in Livermore, California at Camp Arroyo. So there's a whole campus that exists. And all summer long, they rotate out different camps for different kids with different needs, whether they're in wheelchairs or, some of the more serious ones. They have camps for kids with cancer and brain tumors just to make sure that kids feel like kids, for celiac disease, it's probably the most able-bodied camp that they offer, but they close the kitchen down for a full 24 hours to completely gut it and clean it and make sure there's not a morsel of gluten. They're very generous with our camp in that way.
That's awesome.
And then the next day, 115 some odd kids from 9 to, I think, 14 or 15 all come and have the best 5 days ever where they don't have to think for a second that they might get sick. Every meal is prepared by our amazing kitchen staff. Shout out to kitchen staff.
That is so cool. That kind of sounds like the celiac cruise, if you know what I'm talking about, where you just don't even have to think about it.
I haven't done the cruise yet, but it is similar in that way that so many precautions have gone into place. And Celiac Camp, this one has been happening for 17 or 18 summers now. So it's been a long time. Molly, my friend, started off as a teenager as a junior counselor and has gone back every single summer and is now the director. And she and her co-directors have all become really dear friends of mine. My experience was so special. Yeah. I was in charge of 9 to 11-year-old boys.
Oh my gosh.
So high energy, some of them the first time that they're at a sleepaway camp, but they were amazing. There's a lot of responsibility in being in charge of children. Yeah. But it was so special. My kids were just the best. And I had the most amazing co-counselors. And for me, I'm an openly queer person. I am gender fluid in my gender identity. So for me to be with these boys, it was really cool for me to show that being a boy doesn't have to look one particular way. 9 to 11 is such a formidable time. They're trying to figure out and starting to figure out who they are. So it was cool for me to just show up as me and then see how they, were. And by the end of the week, these kids were just free. It was so beautiful. And then again, the fact that they can eat everything and we give them the best summer of their lives, year after year. So I can't wait to go back. It was absolutely
So what was a day? What's an itinerary day look like?
Wake up at 8, you head over to the cafeteria where breakfast is ready for you. Every meal, we have this thing called the mayo jar. So all week long, the kids and counselors write little notes that they put in the mayo jar, and every meal, a different person on campus is invited to come up and read all the notes. Shout out to Walnut Bunk, Walnut Cabin. That's really sweet. So we do that, and then there's 2 morning activities, then there's lunch, and then there's 2 afternoon activities, whether they're archery or pool or lawn games, arts and crafts. And then there's dinner, and then there's some rest time, and then we always have an evening activity, whether that's s'mores and game night or karaoke night. Every year there's a skit night. So the kids in the bunks all make these amazing, hilarious skits, and then the counselors do Dancing with the Stars.
Ooh.
So the counselors come up with choreography. You'll never guess who choreographed the dance for my cabin. Surprise, it was me. It's so much fun. There's something for every single kid to do.
That's so amazing. And I mean, I can't remember the first time I met someone else that had celiac disease, but whenever I was diagnosed at 11, I don't think I knew anyone for years that also had celiac disease that was a kid. So I imagine it's so cool for these kids, coming from different places to just meet other kids that are going through the same thing, and they can talk about it and relate about it and just know that they're not alone. So
yeah,
I feel like that's so special. Were there, conversations like that? And I'm curious too, how is it like relating to them as someone that was diagnosed as an adult and kind of leading them through the week?
It's special, right? Because these kids just feel seen. They feel seen and known, and they don't have to explain anything. Again, I was diagnosed as an adult, so I don't know what that experience is to be a 9 or a 10-year-old and having to explain to other kids why you can't eat something.
Right.
I was bullied enough for being, the queer kid at school. So I couldn't imagine also being the weird kid that had the weird allergy or whatever. You know, that I think is something that I don't take for granted. But for the kids to have that experience where they just have something in common right away, I think that's so special. Yeah. And the other thing about camp that's so cool is every counselor that comes back used to be a camper. So there's all of this history among everyone at camp, and whoever can make it the next year comes back to volunteer their time as a counselor. It's like the most, it's our gluten-free Disneyland, I think. It's like, it's so special.
That's amazing. That's so cool. I feel like one of my favorite parts about starting this podcast is just learning more about celiac myself. Like, I had no idea that there even were celiac camps. So this is just so fun to hear about.
And that they've existed for so many years. It's amazing.
My parents should have sent me when I was young.
Yeah.
I know you do a lot of advocacy work, and I'm just curious your perspective on if there's any like unique challenges or opportunities specifically with how like different cultural or religious communities approach gluten-free living.
Ooh.
A little change of subject.
No, that's a thinker for sure. It is interesting because there are some cultures where gluten is or isn't indigenous to their food. And I think a lot about that, of like, how does that affect different diets and different cultures? You know, as a Jewish person, flour is a big part of our diet. You know, it's bagels. So first and foremost, like, that's like a super Jewish food. I mean, as for other cultures, I think no one is really exempt or excused from how celiac disease can affect the cultural aspect. My friend Pooja, she is gluten-free and allergic to nightshades, and she's Indian. And so she can't eat like any of her culture's food because, I mean, nightshades are tomatoes, potatoes. You think of how many Indian dishes have potato and tomato and peppers, you know, so she at her wedding had to pack her own dinner. You know, I think about the inaccessibility of what, not even just celiac disease, but what so many different allergens can sort of take away from you. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's like the first thing that I think of.
No, totally too. I think like in a similar vein, I'm curious your thoughts on like if there's any disparities or blind spots. I mean, I know we got into this a little bit in terms of, you know, how your doctor doesn't really tell you about cross-contamination and, you know, all these different things you kind of have to learn yourself. But is there anything else that comes up for you whenever you just think about like how celiac disease is discussed and researched and talked about in society?
So I just got back from Orlando, where I was a part of a documentary called Gluten is a Joke.
I've been hearing about this.
And the experience was incredible. And we had so many wonderful conversations. And there was a perspective that was brought up. I forget by whom, but the perspective was, when you're diagnosed with celiac disease and say you're married to someone, that your spouse or your partner is also living with celiac disease in a way. And that was really eye-opening to me. So there's the grief and the growing pains that we ourselves have as the people who are diagnosed. I think we, as the diagnosed, should also be conscientious of the growing pains for the people in our lives that also have to adapt.
Think about it.
You know, I think about my mom is one of my best advocates, but even her, like, it took her a long time to figure out the nuance of, Mom, you have to put aluminum foil down if you're going to put my gluten-free bread in the toaster. You know, there's a learning curve for our loved ones too. So I mean, since hearing that last week, I think it's important to be cognizant of that, of the people in our lives are going to be adapting with us as well. And I think also that the people who are not really your friends will expose themselves as well. The people who are not willing to be helpful or be supportive of your diagnosis.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether that's family or friends, or people who like still make jokes of, oh, I'd like my dinner with extra gluten after 11 years of living with celiac disease. I
get that joke all the time. I'm like, okay.
The joke wasn't funny then, and it's not funny now. Yeah. Come up with some new material, please.
Oh my gosh. Just to clarify, so when you say like someone's spouse is also living with celiac disease, you don't mean in the sense of like they're also
not in a literal way,
but like,
but in how they show up for their celiac partner, you know, because their life has to change too. If they make the decision to do an entirely gluten-free home, their lifestyle is going to be affected by that as well. I mean, we opened with, you know, the cost of being gluten-free. So if a partner decides that they, at home at least, want to also 100% eat gluten-free, now you're feeding gluten-free for two. I met several people on this project who are parents and they have celiac disease, and one or two of their children have celiac disease. And how does that affect the family dynamic? It's a lot to consider. And again, coming back to that concept of the cost of it is significant.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think that there's anything that allies like family, friends, or restaurants, companies can be doing to better support people with celiac disease?
So this one's for the restaurants. I used to work in a restaurant when I was still working as an actor, and in my early glass of Weinstein days to make my money, I worked in front of house as a maitre d'. And
I worked at a pizza restaurant in college, so I was surrounded by gluten.
Surrounded. I was really fortunate to work in a place that took allergies so seriously. And I think my being on the staff helped to re-encourage the difference between a gluten sensitivity and celiac disease. Like we had talked about like every service, we would talk about what's in the fryer. And I think because I was on staff, that conversation was encouraged. So I think for restaurants, that conversation has to be happening more. Especially if you are a restaurant that's going to offer things that are gluten-free. You can't just say that they're gluten-free and not have them be celiac safe protocols. The amount of bars that I've been to where they're like, our French fries and our chips are gluten-free, but there's chicken fingers and wings and onion rings on the menu as well. Like, so it's not gluten-free.
And if it's not gluten-free and, they don't have the resources to have a separate fryer, I think just at the bare minimum, making sure that like the wait staff knows to be able to communicate that. Because I feel like sometimes you go to a restaurant and you're like, okay, is there cross-contamination in the fryer? And they're like, oh, I don't really know.
Right. I just feel like if you work, and this is hard because I know that there are a lot of people that work in hospitality and in restaurants where that's not their passion. People need to make their money however they can. And that's why a lot of people are in hospitality. I think that's fair and valid. But I do feel like in terms of management, there has to be more urgency when it comes to allergens. I think we're starting to get there.
Yeah, totally.
In terms of the celiac conversation, I think we're lagging in a lot of ways. I just think the conversation and more education needs to happen, and I think that's why the community online is so vocal about like this is serious. Like we're not doing this for attention. This isn't a fad. This is our livelihood. You know, my friend Kendra gets so many people in her comments of like, well, just eat at home. Don't go out. It's like, so I'm not allowed to have a social life. I'm not allowed to leave my home because I have an autoimmune disease. That's like absurd. You can't force people to live that way. I think you also talked about that on one of your episodes as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely did. I have definitely gotten some comments like that on just like,
stay home. No, I want to live my life. What do you mean stay home?
Like even before I started the podcast, I vlog on YouTube, and I think I shared that like nightmare experience at like the theater show where like had the dumpling.
Never trust in a theater.
I know. And I remember I got a few comments on that video being like, you shouldn't have expected them to have gluten-free options, or like, just like stay home if you're so worried about your diet.
If you work in hospitality, you should know that vegetarian and gluten-free are not the same thing.
Right.
Like
exactly.
You can fight me on that.
Yeah. But I'm curious, have you, gotten, I mean, I think every content creator does to some extent, but have you gotten like any criticism, or like have there been any challenges with like showing up as like who you are online with celiac disease and the content that you make?
So what's funny is never for being gluten-free.
Okay.
I got on the wrong side of the TikTok algorithm for a video where the comments I were getting were homophobic because I exist. I exist and people are angry. And there was like, I think a year and a half where I just didn't post anything on TikTok because I was like, well, if this is what I'm going to get, I don't want to be here.
Yeah,
and I felt like the community I was cultivating on Instagram was way more loyal and understanding and supportive.
Well, because TikTok, you never know who it's going to reach. Yeah,
right. So it took me a while to finally like gather the chutzpah to go back and start sharing. And I always say, like, Matt, you always say you're unapologetically queer, Jewish, and celiac. So this is how you have to keep showing up in spite of that. And fortunately, I mean, now no one really engages with my stuff on TikTok anymore, and that's like whatever. But
I have the same problem.
I show up regardless and make sure that I'm showing up as authentically as possible. And I think when people meet me in person, I think they're like, "Oh, you're literally the exact same person that you are on the internet." Like that's so important to me. I never want to feel like I'm putting on an act, or that people are going to meet me and be like, "Oh, you are not who I thought you were." Because it's like, why do what you do if you're not going to be truthful in that?
Right. No, totally. I agree. I'm curious because you you're on your content grind. You're posting so many great recipes.
Thank you.
What keeps you motivated now that you've been doing this for, 5 years now?
Yeah. The community.
Yeah.
So this is the realization I've had this year. I've as a content creator, I've been struggling a bit of why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. I get frustrated by the algorithm and all of that. It's like the numbers matter in terms of because I'm a business person also, so the numbers have to matter. You got to
think about the business side too.
But I think because of having this experience with Celiac Camp and because of this experience with this documentary, I just remembered this is all much bigger than me.
Yeah.
The biggest, I've had a lot of big victories, but I finally mastered my gluten-free pizza crust at home.
I saw that. That's so exciting.
I was so excited to finally share it with the community. That was the first thing I thought of was they are going to go nuts for this because it's 8 ingredients that you can get at the store. Mm-hmm. It's not overly complicated. This is something that is accessible for the home cook. And that was one of the reasons why I started my page was I wanted to make sure that gluten-free living was accessible and delicious. If you have the right ingredients, if you have the right people to follow and techniques to follow, you can live a really rich and delicious gluten-free life. So remembering this isn't just about me and my ego. There's so much more at play. There's millions and millions of people living with celiac disease and even more who are not diagnosed, waiting to be, welcomed into our community, and making sure that they're always at the forefront is the most important part of this work for me.
No, I love that. And I agree. I think sometimes I can get too caught up in the numbers and I'm like, okay, this video performed better. This video performed better. But I always get brought back down to earth whenever I get a really heartfelt DM of oh, wow, this just really helped me figure out this one thing with celiac or being gluten-free, or thank you so much for sharing this. I really needed this today. I think those are really the comments that keep me going with being a content creator.
Last night, my friend texted me at 8 o'clock and said, I'm making your zuppa Toscana recipe. And I was oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah.
And then I got a text the next day saying it was one of the most delicious things he's had recently. And
I love
that is that's the best feeling.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Wait,
tell us more about this documentary that you filmed, or can you share more?
I can share some sort of surface level. So It's called Gluten is a Joke. It's a documentary being made by my now dear friend, Robin Hoffman. Mm-hmm. We filmed in Orlando last week, and Robin is a filmmaker who has been living with celiac disease for, I believe, 17 years.
Wow.
And in her process as an artist has really been wondering for many years, can I do this? Can I make a movie about what my experience is?
Yeah.
And so I was one of maybe probably between 17 to 20 people that were invited to be a part of this project. And we all got to share our experiences as gluten-free people. And we did some roundtables and solo interviews. And I was very fortunate to be picked to do a cooking segment, which was so amazing for me.
Cool.
I think that's probably all I can tell you for now. We're still very much in the early development.
Release date on the pipeline. Okay.
I don't even think Robin knows that yet.
Okay.
But we'll keep you posted.
Will stay tuned. Yeah. This is so exciting. All right. Well, this has been so fun. I have some rapid fire questions to
give it to
me. All right. What is one thing you wish people understood about living with celiac disease?
Be rapid fire. What is you can't eat gluten in Europe, no matter who tells you that you can.
Yes, I'm so passionate about that one too. If Ina Garten invited you to dinner, what dish would you bring to impress her? Gluten-free edition, of course.
Ina, I love you. I'm making you a roast chicken because you taught me how to make roast chickens, and I'm going to make you mine.
Amazing. If you could cook a gluten-free meal for anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
Padma Lakshmi, host of Top Chef and Taste the Nation, which is an amazing program.
Ooh, okay.
Padma is... Again, this is not rapid fire. Padma is amazing. I would love to feed her and talk about food in America any day of the week.
I love that. I need to get educated on all of my food shows and
we'll
cooking shows.
We'll talk afterward.
Yeah. Favorite gluten-free flour or baking ingredient?
I'm biased. It's Bob's Red Mill, the blue bag, the gluten-free 1-to-1 all-purpose.
That is really good. Classic. Favorite gluten-free Jewish holiday recipe?
I love making my mom's brisket recipe for Passover.
And it was already gluten-free, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Favorite restaurant in New York City?
We said Keste earlier.
Right,
I'm gonna stick with her. I'm gonna stick with Keste.
Okay. And dream brand collab?
Honestly,
Manifest.
Bounty paper towels, because I am a messy cook.
I love that.
Bounty, if you're listening, hire me. Love you.
Amazing. Well, this was such a fun episode. I know our listeners are going to love this one. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to chat and just like get to know you.
Yeah. All right. Catch us next week on Celiac Diaries. Don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.
Ciao. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Celiac Diaries podcast. I hope you're leaving with a tip, a story, or just a little inspiration to live your best life with celiac. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, or leave a review. I'll see you back here next Wednesday. And until then, stay well.